So Barry, I love the topic that we're going to talk about today, which is you have been lied to about love, because I think that's very intriguing. So before we jump into all of that, tell us why you chose that topic.
Frankly, because I've been on a bit of a rant lately about the fact that we have this rather fantastical vision of love, and most of the stories and the presentations are not telling the truth. And so that's part of the picture. Also, there's the stories of love we learn from our families that also I would tend to think are usually not accurate.
Mm-hmm.
But make it more blatant. Saying you're lied to is a more evocative title.
Mm-hmm. So when you say we have these, did you say fantastical versions or visions of love? Say more about this.
Well, let's just say that society paints a model of relationships that very rarely we can live up to. They paint them through the movies we watch, the songs we listen to, the tabloids, and living in Los Angeles, I see a lot of that promotion about the entertainment industry. And so these people, so I'll just put people generally, seem to portray a level of relationship that is unattainable for the rest of us humans. Not only that, but most of the movies and the love songs out there have been teaching a model of codependence where we can't live without the other person. Like, you make me complete. You actually, to quote Jerry Maguire, you complete me is the epitome of that codependent model. Like, somehow I'm hollow, I'm empty without that person in my life, which a lot of people unfortunately believe, and it's extremely inaccurate. And it's one of my pet peeves, so I'm very adamant about waking people, and particularly women, up to the fact that they're already whole and complete, and that relationship is additive, not filling some gap they have inside.
Yeah, you know, this is so funny that you're saying this, and I do think this is portrayed frequently in movies or in romance literature and songs or that sort of thing. And I can remember once I dated this guy for a while, and at one point he said to me something like, I want it to be just like it is in the movies, where you just kind of like see each other and there's that attraction and you fall in love and it works out just beautifully and perfectly. I mean, he was serious about this, Barry. He was like, you know, what happens in a 90-minute film, that's what he kind of thought love should be like in real life, right?
Right, absolutely. It's the fairy tale, which is, you know, it's nice to be in the honeymoon phase of a relationship, but then real life sets in, and then what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
You know, relationships are not 90 minutes as the movie's portrayed, so you're right about that, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like when I watch the little romance movies or whatever on Hallmark, which my husband kind of laughs at. And he says, you know, he said, we really don't live in a Hallmark world, but sometimes we kind of wish we did, right? And so it's kind of one of
true. You know, there's a meme that's been floating around for a long time on social media about how, you know, women are lied to because of the Hallmark movies and the romance movies about how relationships should be. Men have been lied to because they get porno. So it's the same, it's a different extreme, but the reality is most of what's out there in the media, and again, the love songs and what's portrayed to us as relationships, are largely inaccurate. So then we base our beliefs and our rules for relationship on that. We'll never achieve it. So it's much better to get down to human, honest, real terms of connection, intimacy, and real relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like the example I gave of this guy that I dated, if we're focused on that, it's like we're in a fantasy land. We're focused on the fantasy, not the reality of what real life and real relationships are like. And so I think this is a really important topic.
Yes.
So I also think, Barry, and this leads me to the next question I want to ask you. I also think there's this perception out there for a lot of women, and I'm sure a lot of men, but we're speaking to women here, that if you have the right relationship, that's going to like kind of take care of all of your problems or heal you from the past, or it's going to make everything kind of perfect, right? If you had the right relationship.
Absolutely. And frankly, I mean, when I tell people about my journey, because I talk a lot about our history dictates our relationship choices. I was raised in a family that, well, let me back up the other way. My early dating life was around the idea that everything was wonderful and everything was perfect. And I would be in love with a girl in my teens and woman in my 20s, that when we got to the point where there'd be an argument, because inevitably something wouldn't work and there'd be some sort of discord, I would pack up and leave every single time, because my mind programming was, arguments don't fit in relationships. And for me, that was looking back at my own parents' relationship, because they, being English and Jewish and of a reserve family, we were raised in a family where arguments didn't happen in public. So my parents didn't argue in front of the kids. So my belief was love didn't involve arguments. And so my wiring was set up that way. But the truth is, most, again, love songs and movies portray the same thing, that it's fairy tales and love is the only thing you need to worry about. There's never any arguments, discord, problems, upsets, hurt feelings, any of that stuff, because that's not what they portray.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So what do we do with all of that? What do we do with that? What's the more realistic expectation? How should we view it?
I thought you'd ask that question. Well, there's a lot more to unpack with that one, but the reality is this part, which is that we have to recognize that we are not perfect as interactive beings. We have our own issues, stuff comes up. And when we're in a relationship, we're going to have friction. Part of the relationship pattern, in fact, one of my friends, Lisa Nichols, talks about how relationships are like gifts wrapped in sandpaper. There's this wonderful gift, but it's this friction that happens as well. And so we're in a relationship with somebody and something comes up, an issue, whatever it is, it's tempting to immediately go into blame, judgment, and resentment. Yet if we're willing to say, hang on a second, I'm starting to feel upset. What's really going on here? One, we can actually take ownership of our participation in that upset and discord. And secondly, we can actually have a more elevated conversation with our partner, because we're going to have issues. Stuff is going to happen because we're human. And our partner's going to do something that's going to be that feeling of like treading on our toes or taking the last pickle out of the jar, whatever that thing is we have a thing about. And so it's having the skill set and the willingness to say, you know what, I got upset by that. That doesn't mean you're wrong or I'm wrong. It's about something's in the way. So what can we do to actually heal that or come to an agreement so we don't do that again? Because most people don't do that. They just immediately go throw the blame at somebody else, and then they go and sulk for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I love that description of relationships being gifts wrapped in sandpaper, because I'm a believer that relationships are some of our biggest opportunities for growth, self-awareness, deeper understanding of not only ourselves, but other human beings. And so they are gifts, but you're right, it can bring up a relationship, can bring up kind of those areas that we might otherwise be pretty happy to not really look at.
Absolutely. Well, the thing is also, that's the thing, a relationship is the closest thing to our heart. Generally speaking, we're closer to our partner, intimate partner, intimacy intentionally, than we are to people we work with or to our neighbors or to even our family. So that's going to bring up the most possible things, because when people get that close, it's harder to hide. So internally, our defaults and our natural behaviors would tend to be more revealed there than other places. Plus, the other thing is, when we're the family, we grew up with those people, so we have the patterns, we just know that's what we're about. With a new person, it's not quite the same thing. So they may not be used to our style of way of doing life. And so it's good to have a sense of checking each other out step by step, and also recognizing that they're going to see us more closely than anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that having a partner and being in an intimate relationship is kind of like having a little different mirror than we see, coming back, reflecting back at us, hopefully in a loving way, but it also might help us to see something in ourselves or understand something deeper about ourselves that we might not have seen on our own. It's kind of like when we look in the mirror every day, we see ourselves, we think we see ourselves fully and clearly. We're not necessarily seeing the side views or, heaven forbid, the rear view there.
Absolutely. Yes.
And sometimes relationships are kind of like, whoa, that's what's back there.
Right. Which comes back to originally the title, which you said about, or the initial question about, being lied to. Most people don't talk about this in relationship. Again, relationship is perceived to be this beautiful paradise where there's never any arguments, upsets, and discords, and it's love and sex and passion and joy the whole way through. And it's not true. I mean, anybody who's been in a relationship knows it isn't always that way, although we may keep thinking, one day I'll find that person that I'll never have any arguments with. Good luck with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Let us know when you find that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Barry, you talk about how we are sometimes choosing love on autopilot, but we don't even necessarily recognize it or know that. Does that come back to what we were talking about earlier, kind of like the family stuff, family of origin stuff? Tell us more about that.
Yeah. Well, another way of putting it is like, and I said this before with some of my clients who talked about this, where for women particularly, there's a thing where they tend to keep attracting their father in relationship energetically. They pick men who are mirrors or almost doppelgangers for their father's way of being. So that autopilot's the same thing in the sense that what it is our default belief about how love is that we never really think about. I don't know if anybody, frankly, who consciously goes, okay, so I'm in a loving relationship and love for me means this, 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 and this. We just presume it's going to be okay. And for most of us, and I was in the same way for a long time, I came out of a family where the way we loved was the way we loved. And so any adult relationship had to be in the same vein to feel familiar and feel comfortable. And so that familiarity becomes an autopilot because we're not consciously and intentionally choosing a relationship we want for certain qualities. And the thing about women marrying their fathers, and actually men marry their mothers in the same way sometimes, is because we're looking for that familiarity of love that comes from the opposite gender. And unfortunately, for most of us, we're running a autopilot or a default programming that was something implanted when we were younger, because we look at love from a very young point of view. Most of the time, our choice for love aren't coming from the adult mind that we think we are. They're coming from that 5-year-old self that learned love at the feet of our father and our mother, watching their relationship or a dysfunctional relationship, and they're thinking that's the way love must be, and we'd copy that without realizing it, because we don't go at 5 years old, oh, that's the way it's supposed to be. We just take it in that it's the way it's supposed to be. And then 20, 30 years later, our dating life, it's like, why am I doing the same thing my mom and dad did? That's weird. This is why, because we've taken on beliefs that we haven't unpacked and resolved from childhood. And so the autopilot runs that way.
Mm-hmm. Is that one of the reasons why you think, Barry, that so many women feel like they're kind of attracting the same man, different face, kind of over and over again?
Yes, absolutely. Because I'm like, which way do I go with this? And so much as I'll keep it simple. Simply put, yes. And the way that we are in life is that we don't, again, this is human behavior. We don't look at our past relationships and go, okay, so what didn't work there? What do I want to change back there? We simply go, okay, next. So that was a bad relationship. I'll do better next time. And it's this repeated, let's say like a hamster wheel, like cycling through relationship after relationship after relationship without doing any self-investigation, no autopsies on that past relationship, how it didn't work and why it died. Whereas reality is, if we did that, we could change a whole course direction in a new way to find a new relationship, because otherwise we are going to tend to attract the same thing again and again and again, because we haven't changed who we are. And so who we are becomes the attractor of what we get.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of this story my husband shared with me about a man he used to work with years ago, and this man had been through 4 divorces. And, a lot of pain, both on his side and with the women. And he said, I finally have come to the place in my life where I finally recognize, this has to have something to do with me. I am the denominator here. 4 divorces later, it can't be all about the women, right?
Absolutely. In fact, it's funny because speaking of that for a second, just a thought that just popped in my head is about how we do tend to copy our parents unconsciously. I saw a post, it was actually on social media a couple of days ago. I can't remember who it was. It was a celebrity who was getting an annulment in his marriage 2 weeks after he had it. And it was his 3rd marriage. And it turns out his son, who's 28, is also on his 3rd marriage. How's that for mirroring? So that's an extreme case, but that's a little reminder that we tend to copy what came before us because it's the way we learn. So and that's the thing with your friend, with your husband's friend or coworker, to come to the awareness like, oh, it's not about them, it's about me, is a huge step in the direction of awareness and then making a different choice. So I'll give him props for saying, oh, it's not about them, it's about me. That's huge.
Yeah, and this goes back to that reflection and looking at what has happened in some of the past relationships and seeking for patterns. I just think we can learn so much from patterns if
absolutely.
we take the time to actually look deep enough to see them.
Yeah, but of course most people don't want to look there. It's like, no,
Right.
I want love. I want the relationship. Forget the bad stuff. I'm not going to look there. It's a choice.
Well, in some ways, it always might feel easier to say it's something out there
Oh,
rather
yes.
than to own it and say, oh, wait, it might be something in here. It might be something going on inside me that's creating the atmosphere for these kinds of experiences to keep happening.
Yeah, it's true.
That takes a certain amount of willingness to look at ourselves in a deeper way. And so many people go through life just kind of operating on an, unconsciously. They're not looking
Yeah.
underneath the surface of what's really happening.
I want to drop a bigger word on there, not just willingness, but responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
The truth
Yeah.
is we have a responsibility for our lives. And if we don't make a conscious choice to take responsibility, we're kind of going to get what we get without any control. And some people are going, but why is that unfair? The world is treating me badly. I'm not getting what I want. It's like, well, maybe you're not taking responsibility for your own participation. And in a relationship, especially, being responsible for your participation in that relationship is the key to understanding what's happening, what's not working, what you can do differently to get what you want.
Well, yeah, and I think this is coming back to what we were talking about at the beginning. This is the way that the media portrays things. Things are just supposed to naturally happen, and we're all supposed to kind of know how to do relationships. And there are, Barry, in fairness, a certain number of people that seems to work for. I mean, I have these young 20-something nieces and nephews, and they seem to have, managed to marry the perfect person, at least so far so good, right?
Right.
In their 20s, and I'm like going, how did that happen for them? And me, it was just, one banged up skinned knee and broken heart and broken head after another, going through my long and arduous journey to love. And so I can see where there's a certain number of people out there going, well, it does seem to work that way for some people.
Well, I would just say one thing just in support of you, for what you just said, is that for a lot of people, relationship is as convenient as comfortable slippers. They don't do any work for it. They just want to put them on and be comfortable. And so they don't even go into the depths of connection. One of my passionate things about relationship is it's an incredible place to explore the possibility, but it also means you got to be willing to do the work to get there. And I think in your case, compared with your nieces and nephews, is you choose to take relationship as a much more immersive experience, shall we say, than perhaps they do. They just want to have convenience and maybe nice sex and maybe food on the table. And that's all they care about. They don't care about emotional connection, intimacy, journey together, having visions and intention of where they want to go with their partnership. They just want to have someone that there's a warm body next to them. If that's all you want, you can generally get away with that. However, even a warm body next to you can give you issues too.
Yeah. Well, and for me, and I guess maybe people develop at different rates in terms of their maturity and that sort of thing, but I didn't even really know who I was in my 20s. So I look back on it and I think, how could I have made a very wise choice? It would have been all based on attraction or fun or whatever, hormones, whatever.
Yeah, I was in the same boat. I mean, I by the time I was in my mid-20s, I'd lived in 4 countries, and I was still going, so who am I? Where do I live? What am I about? So I think for most of us, really, I mean, some people do mature early, but most of us are still only in development for quite a few years after we hit 20.
Mm-hmm. And some of us, are still figuring out who we are and what we want to be when we grow up, decades after that, right?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
But if we look at life, if we look at all of this as a journey and as an opportunity for growth and for development and expansion of what is possible for us, and like you said, if we're willing to take responsibility, I love that you use that word, for our own lives and our own happiness, it can be such an incredible blessing and benefit to use the wisdom that you've gained, some of it, albeit the hard way,
True, yes.
to create these new opportunities and possibilities in your life. And that's why I love doing these events too, because I believe that even just one tweak or one something that someone hears and applies in their life, maybe they've heard it before, but they hear it in a little different way, or it just resonates, or the timing's right for them, can literally change the trajectory of their love lives and really their lives. And I just think that's such a privilege that we get to be a part of helping people, not only ourselves, but other people create those kind of opportunities.
Yeah, me too. That's why I love doing this. Is my passion. It's my vision, and I love to serve and inspire people to have more love in their lives by getting through their issues. That's the other part, by the way, is the more that we free up those blockages and those things we have in the way for love, the more we can love. So, as a selfish act, I'm bringing more love to the planet by waking people up to be more able to love because they remove what's in the way of that. So I agree with you. Yes, it's definitely an adventure worth taking.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was just having another conversation earlier today, and we were having kind of a little bit of a similar theme going for a minute in that conversation, where he was saying, when we're doing this kind of work, when we're doing this work that creates more self-awareness and allows us to show up in the world in the way that we want to, and in relationships the way that we want to, we're doing it for ourselves, certainly, but we're also creating new possibility for those around us, because we're able to contribute more. We're contributing to helping heal the world and helping to transform what is possible with relationships. We don't control other people, but by us having more skills and more knowledge and more ability to be in choice around these things and to show up differently, we're creating that possibility, not only for ourselves, but helping that be possible for other people too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a cool thing when we think about the ripple effect of what we're doing, right?
Agreed. Yes, agreed.
Yeah, it's just kind of a neat thought. So back to our main topic. Do you think there's anything else we've been lied about when it comes to love?
Well, this is the thing that's part of my pet peeves, is that we keep thinking that love is out there, which is the probably the biggest part of my work. Yeah, I thought you might go that way.
Oh, that's a big one. So glad I asked you that question.
because as I said before, the media and the movies portray that we'll find love out there somewhere, and that one day our prince will come and will come riding across the horizon on their steed and everything else. It's very romantic, but the thing is, the problem with this, and this is why I talk about it a lot, is if you like being a puppet on strings, then go ahead and do that. Because what's happening, if you put your expectations of love outside of you, then if that love goes away, you get upset, which means your upset's based on somebody else loving you or not loving you. That means you gave them the power to control you, which is not what I would recommend in a relationship. Maybe someone wants to do well, no, I'm going to go there. It's a whole other conversation. Sorry, I had a flash of something else entirely about control and stuff. But in this context of healthy relationships, we are tending to make the other person responsible, accountable, and in charge of our feelings. And that really isn't very healthy. That's actually the epitome of codependence as far as I'm concerned. And one of my callings in life is to stamp out codependence once and for all, because we deserve love, absolutely. And more than that, we need to deserve our own love first, so we can actually give from our overflow, because relationships are meant to be fully participatory, is that right? Yeah, fully participatory by both partners, where each partner brings all of themselves, all their loving, to make the relationship magnificent, versus a relationship where you have to fill me up and I can't feel love without your love, is like a 50-50 relationship. That's the codependent model. And so absolutely loving each other fully, starting with loving ourselves first, is the way to have a healthy relationship.
Yeah, and I think kind of a lie that goes along with this is that one person is going to fulfill all of your needs, right? With that, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
God.
You're going to have all of your needs fulfilled, and we might not like consciously think that, but I think sometimes we like feel that. Like it's like on some level, there's the belief that if this right person comes into our lives, they'll automatically know and understand exactly what we want and need, and they'll be there to fulfill all of our hopes and dreams, our romantic hopes and dreams. And I think that's another fallacy that's out there.
Absolutely. In fact, I've recently had actually 2 clients and also reading some articles about this, that women who had experienced that feeling of somebody bringing everything to the table, making it so magnificent, they knew everything about them, they took care of them, everything else, turns out they were narcissists, because that's the way they work. That style of approach is one where I'll be so able to take care of you so you feel so wonderful, so at some point you'll believe me and trust me completely, then I'm in control. And narcissistic power is actually controlling other people. So if you find someone who does that for you right up front, I'd be very careful that you might be making the choice that wouldn't work. I'd rather be with somebody you get to explore learning how to be there for each other and to make yourselves both more able to help each other and serve each other and inspire each other, absolutely. But from the get-go, it would ideally be more, I'll say clumsy, but more of an exploratory process. If they know right at the front how to do everything perfectly, I tend to doubt that's going to be really sustainable.
Yeah, I think we're talking about more of a healthy interdependence rather than a codependent kind of relationship. And if you're making someone else responsible or believe that they're going to meet all of your wants and needs, then you're also potentially giving them that control to take that all away if
Exactly.
they left.
Yeah, that is totally the difference in codependence and interdependence, yes.
So it comes back to that responsibility word of being responsible for your own happiness, for your own well-being, for your own decisions, for following what you feel is right for you in relationships.
Yeah, and then the other person can love you on top of that.
Say again?
Then the other person can love you on top of that, which is actually more enjoyable. Yeah.
And I think another responsibility we have, Barry, speaking of responsibility, is to be grounded in the truth, to not be caught up in these fantasies. If we want to have a real, mature, healthy relationship, which I believe most of the women here want, we have to be willing to tell ourselves the truth. Because you know what? A lot of times, and I'm sure you've had this experience with some of your clients too, a lot of times when a woman comes to me or they come to you and they've been through disappointing or heartbreaking situations, they could be in a place of blaming the man. And sure, maybe he had a part or a fault in it. But in part, oftentimes it's because a woman chose to allow herself to be deceived or participated in her own self-deception by not being willing to tell herself the truth or to be grounded in reality. In other words, she chose to believe the fantasy.
Absolutely. You know, there's a challenge with this, because if we don't take care of ourselves first, how can we take care of anybody else? And so being a place where there's other person's responsibility, and then when they do us wrong, we judge and blame and resent them, that's not going to work. I mean, one of my favorite analogies of resentment is that it's like taking poison and expecting the other person to die, which is the epitome, again, of codependence. That thing is like, I'll do something to myself to hurt myself so that you'll suffer. It doesn't make any sense. And so many people I know have chosen to be in a wounded grievance about a relationship that didn't work, and they carry that pain for months, years afterwards. The other person's gone on with their life and they're moved on. So why would you want to give them, well, why don't you give yourself that suffering? Why not take care of yourself, grow through that pain, that wounding, that upset, and become more whole and more able to function in a relationship so you can have actually a healthy one the next time.
Yeah, so even though, here's where we can kind of bring this full circle. Even though we might have been lied to about love, we can now choose to be grounded in reality and truth.
I think that's a perfect way of summarizing it, because it's going from the lies to the truth, and the truth is when you love yourself first and you honor and respect yourself and you do learn to be grounded in who you are, you live in a much more healthy way for relationships. So yes, truth versus lies. I pick truth every day.
Yeah, well, it's very true. The truth does set us free. It sets us free to make choices based in reality, and that's going to lead us to a lot happier place than making decisions based in lies or fallacies.
Absolutely, yes. Love it. Thank you.
If you just have any last little piece or last little word or last little word of encouragement, anything you'd like to say before we wrap up today?
We've covered so much. I'm thinking, what would I say as a distillation of that? The simple truth is that we are loving beings naturally, but we have a habit of tending to put other things on top of it because of the way we're raised and what we believe the way the world works. So the more willing we are to get that stuff out of the way and become more loving, the more we all can be more loving. So I'm inviting everybody to just learn to take whatever's in the way out of the way so they can love more fully. That's the simplest way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah, and self-love is just such an important piece to that, because I believe you're modeling, when you're being loving toward yourself and you have that capacity for self-love, in a way you're modeling and energetically putting out there into the universe how you want to be treated. And I think that's a really powerful place to come from, because we attract healthier love, for sure.
Absolutely, yes. Agreed.
From a place of self-love.
That's one of the secrets of this work.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So Barry, thank you once again. It's been lovely to have you join us, and thank you for sharing so generously.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me again. I'm grateful to be back here again. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. And ladies, I'm so happy to have you here with us too. And Barry and I send our love and our appreciation for your presence here, for being a part of this work, and for being committed to having extraordinary love and an extraordinary life, because that's the kind of audience we attract to this event. And we're really grateful for your participation and your presence, and look forward to seeing you for more. Bye-bye for now.